There are times in life when we need to let go of something we love to make room for something we love even more. I find myself at one of those times now. Ever since I was a young girl, I've wanted to write, and I have. I've journaled. I've written poems. Even during the seasons when I didn't have time for writing for fun, I wrote technical documents for my career in housing. For the last 3 years or more, I've consistently written my blog, which evolved into this podcast. Writing has been a beautiful outlet to express my feelings. In my younger years, writing was strictly something I did for myself. In recent years, with the podcast, it has provided a platform to share my voice in this crazy mixed-up world. A voice that often shares a different perspective from mainstream society. I am so grateful to you for listening and have to be honest, I've fallen in love with everything about the process of this podcast. Whether it's a show with guests or what I call my monologue, where I just express my own thoughts, I've enjoyed recording, editing, and producing the show. And now it's time to press pause on this show that I love so much. I'll explain how I came to that conclusion and what my plans are in this episode. I hope you'll join me. Welcome to Longing for More, where Christians come to strengthen their faith, revive their soul, and learn to live their lives with a sense of fulfillment and peace. Listen each week to learn how to incorporate your faith into your daily activities, stop wandering through life feeling empty and unfulfilled, and begin to live your more. Let's get started. Probably 20 years ago, God gave me the title to my book. In December of 2018, I announced on this show that it was time to write that book. I've talked about it a few times on the show, and I've committed myself to it again in January. But honestly, it keeps getting pushed off to the side. A couple of weeks ago, I was watching the series The Chosen. If you haven't watched it yet, you really should. It is so good. They basically take biblical stories and fill in the gaps. I'm a detail person, and I really love authors who help me imagine all the finer aspects of the scenes described in the Bible. I've come to realize that they aren't just stories, they are glimpses into real people's lives. I'm sure that is a part of the reason that I love the series The Chosen so much. In one of the episodes, Peter was in a tough spot. In their depiction of the story, he owed the government a lot of money, and his deadline to pay up was fast approaching. In one last-ditch effort to pay his debt, he went out and fished all night long. He did everything he could to fill those nets, and he did not catch one fish. You may recognize where the Bible picks up here because it was that morning that he and his friends came across Jesus preaching on the shore. They stopped to listen. Jesus actually even got in his boat to speak. When it was time to leave, Jesus asked Peter to drop his net one more time. Peter started to argue with Jesus, but ended up doing what he was asked. I sat with tears streaming down my face as the nets were filled to overflowing. Jesus had asked Peter to trust him. When Peter followed what Jesus had asked him to do, he was rewarded abundantly. Peter ultimately gave up everything to follow Jesus and become a fisher of men. Something he soon found was to be so much more gratifying than any work he had ever done previously. It was in the same time frame that I had been called back for an abnormal mammogram. That test showed some suspicious tissue they felt compelled to do a biopsy on. I've had lots of ultrasounds and follow-up mammograms in the past, but never a biopsy. Somehow, I knew this time was different. I was remarkably calm about it. In fact, I told very few people about it because I really wanted to be sure before I had to explain much to the people that I loved in my life. I knew with all my heart that God would carry me through it. In fact, a part of me kind of started thinking that if it was cancer, that might be a good time to pause this podcast and write that book I'd been talking about. And I really liked that idea. I started imagining my life as being an author that I'd always dreamed of and what that could look like. A part of me started to hope it was cancer so I could do just that. Did you hear that? I know. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? And that is when it occurred to me that I didn't have to have a life-threatening illness to give myself permission to do what I've always dreamed of doing. I just needed to do it. Yet knowing that I can and doing it are two different things. It was a scary thought to give up something, even for a short time, that I'd gotten so attached to. One night, as I prepared for bed, I listened to a meditation that led me through a prayer that had me ask Jesus to speak to me through my dreams. Now I know he speaks to me at night a lot, but this night was particularly memorable because instead of waking up worrying, I woke up with the words, absolute faith, on my mind. And it felt like God said to me, we've got this. Just have absolute faith. But what exactly is absolute faith? I looked up the word absolute, and it means perfect, complete, not mixed or adulterated, pure, outright, and not limited in any way. The definition of faith is confidence or trust in a person or thing, a belief that is not based on proof, and, of course, my favorite, a belief in God and his promises as made through Jesus Christ and the scriptures by which humans are justified or saved. I decided it was God's way of saying, don't mind what the pros say. You can take the rest from the show and fulfill this dream. It's time. Kind of sounded like put the nets on the other side of the boat, Vana. So here I am. I'm ready to let go of the good to get better. I'm ready to create a space in my life for more. And the best way for me to do that is to give myself permission to pause. You see, the test showed some spots that need to be removed. Fortunately, we caught it really early in the game, so it means that it will take very little away from the work that I am so blessed to do. I'll have some appointments, but nothing drastic. I just want to make space for the things my soul is longing for, and more importantly, for the work that I believe God is asking me to do in this season of my life. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but I've decided I don't need to. I trust that God will provide the next step when I need to know what it is. How's that for absolute faith? So initially, I'm taking a 30-day break from the podcast. I envision myself continuing production of the show, but at this point, I don't know when or how often. Hopefully, that will be clear to me when I do my next show on October 20th, 2020. I plan to write on what is happening on my blog on occasion during this pause from my usual schedule. Since it will be sporadic, I encourage you to sign up for my mailing list so you can keep posted on what's happening and when I publish a blog post. I know it's important to keep those of you who have been gracious enough to follow this podcast and my other work informed in my progress, but I feel compelled to do so in a somewhat less exposed place than Facebook. My blog and email will be a good place for us to communicate. In the meantime, I ask for your prayers for God's guidance in this journey and for his will to prevail. And I thank you for your patience and your grace to understand my need for this space in my life at this time. In addition to writing, I'm looking forward to spending more time in the Word and with friends and family during this short pause. I plan to give myself time to rest and my body time to heal. But I'm not stopping. Nope, not even close. That is why this episode is permission to pause. In fact, I'm excited to open my new group in my mastermind community starting early in November. If you're interested in learning more about that amazing opportunity, please go to vanajohnson.com/mastermind for details. If you're even remotely interested in joining us after you read the material, set up a call so we can visit about it. I'll enjoy the opportunity to visit with you about it and see if we're a good fit. I'm sure it sounds crazy, but it really feels pretty amazing to be giving myself permission to pause at this juncture in my life. I feel blessed to be surrounded by the many friends and family that God has provided to share this journey with me, and I'm excited to live out my dream and to finally live my more on a whole new level. So I really appreciate you stopping by today. It means a lot to me that you're still here. Let's stay in touch, and I look forward to seeing you back here in a month, October 20th to be exact. And if you find yourself longing for more, there are 122 past episodes out there to listen to and almost that many blog posts to go read. I'd be honored if you'd go listen or read some of them. You can find them at my website at vanajohnson.com. I'm amazed sometimes when I go back and listen at how relevant they still are after all these months. You are such a gift. I hope you know that. I value you and your being here so much. And I hope when God calls you to it, you will give yourself permission to pause. Until next time, go, be blessed, stay safe, and live your more. Oh, P.S. Ladies, if you haven't already, go get that mammogram done. And men, you are not off the hook. Make sure the women you love are current with theirs too. Be well, my friend.